Very excited to be talking to Brian Becker. He's the host of the Socialist Program. He's the national coordinator of the Answer Coalition and the author of Imperialism in the 21st Century. So, welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
Hi, how are
Glad to be
you?
here. I'm great.
Thanks.
How are you doing?
Good, I'm good. I wanted to share a clip with you and ask you for your opinion on it. Something that Joe Biden said recently when he was speaking in Poland.
We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principle, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Okay, so he's talking about Putin. He says, for God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. What were your thoughts about that comment?
Well, Antony Blinken and the entire Biden team have spent the last 24 hours saying he went off script. He went off script. This war isn't about regime change. That's not what it's about. This isn't another regime change war. But, when you listen to that comment, he doesn't look like he's off script. He's not like moving away. This is his speech. And maybe he revealed what they're actually saying behind the scenes. And afterwards, the blowback was so big that the Biden administration is saying, no, he didn't mean it. Those were imprecise words from the president who's speaking off the cuff. But just think about the U.S. government. Here's the president of the United States saying, the president of Russia, who's elected, you might not like Putin, whatever. He's an elected president. He's the sovereign head of a state that's recognized at the United Nations. And the United States president says he can't remain in power. Like it's America's decision.
Yeah.
It's Joe Biden's decision. I mean, the U.S. said Noriega couldn't stay in power, and they brought him to an American prison for 30 years. He was the head of state in Panama. And then they said Saddam Hussein couldn't remain in power, and they had him executed after seizing Baghdad. And then they said Gaddafi couldn't stay in power, and he was lynched in the streets. And Hillary Clinton came and said, we came, we saw, he died, and sort of laughed about it.
Laughed, yeah.
Then they said Assad must go. I mean, what other government in the world arrogates to itself the idea that it can determine who the leaders will be of other countries? This is the real story of American foreign policy, and it says a lot about what's going on with the war effort. I was doing a little research earlier today about the issue of regime change because obviously, to go back to where we started, Biden called on Putin to, quote, not remain in power.
Yeah.
In 1953, the U.S. overthrew the Mossadegh government in Iran, which many people know about. The sin of the democratically elected government of Mohammad Mossadegh was it nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, now known as British Petroleum, or BP. And the government in Iran said, look, our people are starving. The Iranians were very, very poor. And all of the profits from oil wealth are going to Britain. So they nationalized the oil company, and the CIA and British intelligence imposed sanctions on Iran, created a lot of misery. The middle class became a political opponent of the government. And then the CIA and British intelligence staged a very bloody coup, and tens of thousands of Iranians were killed. And the US toppled that democratically elected government, said it could not remain in power. And they put the Shah, a monarch, a king, a dictator, on the throne for the next 26 years. The next year, the New York Times, in its lead editorial, wrote, underdeveloped countries with rich resources now have an object lesson in the heavy price that must be paid by one of their numbers who goes berserk with fanatical nationalism. That's the New York Times, the liberal New York Times. They're so, they feel they are God, that they can carry out regime change anywhere in the world, not because Mossadegh was doing something bad. It's because he nationalized the British oil company. And we have to think about that when we think about the U.S. did the same in Libya, same in Dominican Republic, same in Iraq. They tried to do it in Syria. Like, all of these regime change operations are not for something good. They're really always for empire, and especially for the class in the empire that benefits the most, the corporations, the banks, the 1%. So if you want peace, you have to combine the struggle for peace with an anti-capitalist analysis and understand that the only way to have power is not to come to the Democrats and beg them to be something different or better. We actually have to do the hard job of organizing the people. And right now it's very hard, but we have to keep doing it.